Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the session on FBI My Money 123. This is a financial literacy workshop, and it is part of Money Smart Week SA 2024. We are very fortunate to have with us Katlego Mei. He is a practicing financial professional, and he is from Galileo Capital, and he is going to facilitate the session. Katlego, I see the recording. We're just waiting for it to get on the way. And over to you, Katlego. We are looking forward to learning from you today.
Thank you, Rihanna. Thank you for having me. I just want to confirm again that you can see my slide.
Yes, I can.
Okay, perfect. And good afternoon to everybody. Such an honor and a great pleasure to be here with you. As Rihanna has already put it, this is a financial literacy workshop. So today we'll be literally covering the basics to hopefully help us become better and smarter at managing our finances, since it's a Money Smart Week. And hopefully after this week, we'll be smarter with our money and make good financial decisions. So just to start off, I've been asked to just let everyone know that this should not be construed as financial advice. It is not financial advice as defined in the FAYS Act. We are merely sharing information to help us become better at managing our money. If you do want to speak to a financial planner, I will share the details later, where you can go, what you can do to speak to a financial planner and get financial advice. For now, this is a session for information and learning purposes only. So I think I should start by introducing who the Financial Planning Institute is, Financial Planning Institute of Southern Africa. That's really a professional body for us financial planners in South Africa. So why do we need financial planning? So why do you need financial planning? Basically, you need financial planning to ensure that you can structure and arrange your finances to meet whatever goals you have set for yourself. Rihanna mentioned earlier that I am a certified financial planner. What that means is I hold the CFP designation, and a CFP professional is someone that has a minimum qualification of NQF 8. I have passed the FPI board exam and have at least 3 years experience. At this point, I am around about 11 years of experience. So I've been at it for a little bit. A CFP professional, as CFP professionals, we do need to adhere to the stringent code of ethics that is set by the Financial Planning Institute of South Africa to ensure that whichever client we work with, we place your needs first. And so it's really about you as a client and putting a plan in place that's suitable for you. So what is the value of financial planning? So what's the value in it for you to pursue this journey of financial planning and partner with a professional financial planner? Well, we'll see on this survey that was done by the Financial Planning Standards Board, who's an international body of financial planners. The Financial Planning Institute of South Africa is affiliated to the FPSB. And they've done a survey, and the research shows that people who partner with a CFP professional are better off in a sense that they experience a higher quality of life. They are more satisfied with their financial situation. Uh, they have greater financial confidence and a better experience with the financial planning process. Just to talk more about the benefits and the value of financial planning, you'll see that the top 5 is improve financial well-being, which will give you peace of mind, better financial planning decision making. So that really speaks to once you've partnered with a CFP professional, you will be in a place to make financial decisions with confidence, knowing that it is the right thing and it is suitable for you. They will also help you explain and simplify financial matters. The financial world can be filled with jargon and concepts that may seem foreign for the layman from time to time. So partnering with a professional will help you demystify that and get better clarity. People also feel more satisfied with their wealth and improved freedom and have more control over their finances. And also, it goes beyond the money. As I'm sure we can all imagine, being more in control of your finances will lead to you feeling more positive about life. As you can see, there's 65% of people say financial planning positively impacted their family life, so they're happier homes. 83% feel they cope better when faced with health issues. 80% agree that financial planning helps fulfill their dreams. And 62% report financial planning positively impacting their mental health, which is really big in our current times. So as you can see, lots and lots of benefits to actually going through the financial planning process and making better financial decisions. So I guess really the golden question is, where do you start? Or what is a good place to start? What should you do? The first and foremost, I think we should all look at ourselves, look at our situations, and set goals for ourselves. So what is it that you really want to achieve with your life? What do you want to do for yourself, for your family? Where are you going? What does your future look like? So set goals for yourself. It's very important. The important thing about goals is that they should be smart goals. So what that really means is they should be specific. So it should be something specific, like, for example, I want to go on a holiday. I want to pay for my children's education. I want to retire comfortably. So it should be something specific. It should be measurable. So how much is that holiday going to cost? How much is your child's school fees? And so on and so forth. It should be achievable, also realistic, and there should be a time frame attached to it. So once you've set your goals, the next place to go is to look at your budget. Budgeting, I can't stress the importance of a budget enough. I look at my own personal budget at least twice a week, or 3 to 2 times a week. But when you initially starting off, it's good to track your budget daily. So really writing down how much is coming to your account, what you're spending your money on, to help you record your expenses and keep track of things, even if it's something as small as buying a coffee or a lunch at the cafeteria. Note that down so that you can see. After 2 months or so, you'll be able to see or start picking up a trend in your budget, and you will notice where you are budgeting accurately, meaning, so where are you spending what you have budgeted to spend? and where are you falling short? So where are you overspending that ultimately results in you having less money at the end of the month? So really a good way to keep track of things, keep track of your money, know where it is going so that you can make better decisions. There are different ways of doing a budget. Some people are good at Excel and spreadsheets, so they prefer to do their budgets that way. Some people are more digitally inclined. There are some apps out there that you can use to do your budget. But the important thing is that you get started and do one. What you can also do is keep track of your spending by keeping your receipts in a file or an envelope so that you can reconcile what you've written down to your slips every month. Also, obtaining a bank statement from your bank to go through each line item and see what you've spent the money on. It shouldn't take you a long time if you track it over the month and you're just reconciling it at the end of the month. It should be fairly easy. It takes up to 30 minutes to do. And then, yeah, as I said earlier, from month 2 and beyond, you will really start to see the trend, know what you're spending your money on, and keep track of your finances in that way. As a matter of interest, you can indicate by a show of hands, or maybe just give us a thumbs up. Whom of you do keep a monthly budget already? Rihanna, you're gonna have to help me check the reactions. I can't see anything on my side, but I'm hoping that there's a few people who do follow this process already.
Yes, Katlego, we've had quite a couple of thumbs up and hands up. So it looks as though people are really doing the budget. So they are already, on track to really make a difference in their finances. And while I've got the floor, could you please just complete the survey in the chat, everybody online, when you have a moment towards the end of the presentation, so that we just know how to improve our future presentations. And good luck to the guys that's already doing budget. Back to you, Katlego.
Thanks, Rihanna. Sure, I'm thrilled. I'm excited to hear that people are doing budgets because I know that's one of the things we often do avoid. We don't, and often it's just to avoid facing our reality. But it's good to see that people are doing budgets and keeping a track of things. So really, after you've done your budget and you know where your money is going, statistics do show that, quite a number of South Africans, a number of us are struggling with debt. We over indebted, spending a lot of money on debt. So I think that's the next point to sort of discuss and challenge in your financial life. Is the debt element. And with debt comes a credit record. So what is a credit record? So it is your credit history. So a record of how you pay your debts, how much debt you've got, and so on and so forth. And it is important because lenders, insurers, and employers may use it to assess how you manage your financial responsibilities. Your credit history determines your ability to obtain credit. Your credit will determine the terms of the credit you get from the financial institution you deal with.
Katlego, sorry, I just want to ask the people that's got their mics on, could you please just mute? It's quite disturbing having background noises. Thanks. Back to you, Katlego.
Perfect. Yeah, so credit providers do use your credit score to measure their risk. I can still hear the background noise, guys. Please, if you can just mute your mic. Are you able to mute everyone on your side, Rihanna?
I'm going to try, Katlego.
Okay.
Sorry, Katlego, I'm not able to just continue as best as you can, please.
Okay, no problem. I hope everyone can hear me clearly. Apologies for the background noises, but please give us a thumbs up if you can hear me and see me. All right. So yes, as I was saying, so credit providers such as banks do use your credit score to measure actually what risk they're taking to when they borrow you money. So the better your credit score, the better the terms of the credit you'll get. So if you behave well with your credit, you are likely to get better or more favorable interest rates. Whereas if your credit record is not great, then you end up paying more in interest because of the higher interest charges and the like. So just to look at the different classifications of credit that's determined by your score. So you get those that fall in the very poor category, poor, fair, good, and then those who are excellent in their credit score. So in South Africa, the credit score ranges from 330 to 850. A high score indicates to the financier or the bank that you are a responsible borrower, while a low score means that you are less responsible. You are entitled to one free credit report per year from the credit bureaus. These days, though, you can access it monthly online. It's updated monthly. I personally do use Clear Score. I like it because I can keep track of what my score is. They do give you tips on how to improve where you are not doing well. And also, you can use it to monitor the different accounts on your name, which does help in terms of where there's fraud in other activities and accounts in your name that you don't know about. It's actually a good way to keep track of all accounts that are in your name and monitor your credit score. The more you build it, the better your score will be over time. So now getting to how does the credit score link up to everything? That ultimately determines what deals you get on your debt. But remember, when it comes to debt, there are a few things to consider. With debt, one should really think about what they do and what they buy using debt. That's why we get the concept of a good debt and bad debt. Will debt hold you back? Yes, if you don't budget properly and you overcommit yourself, debt will tend to take its toll, and then all of a sudden, when you're keeping track of your budget, you'll see that more and more of your cost is going to debt. So try by all means to be a responsible borrower and only incur credit where needs be, and try to use it as far as possible for good debt and not bad debt. So what is good debt and bad debt? Good debt is debt that essentially on things that help you to improve and enhance your situation and your financial well-being. Example of this would be a mortgage on your home. That's good debt because the price or the value of your house does increase over time. And essentially you can sell it for more at the end of the day. Very important, make sure that you are buying within a price range that you can afford. Do not overcommit. As we've seen, when you are on a variable interest rate, like some of us are, what that means is when you're on an interest rate system that's not fixed, so your interest charges do not stay the same. They change as and when the Reserve Bank changes the repo rate. So we've seen over the last year or so or two, massive increases in interest rates. And what that has meant is the cost of debt has increased for many households, which has led to households being financially under pressure. Other forms of good debt is the car finance. This is a big one. I often say to my clients that they should really buy in a category that they can afford as well. So don't buy a car because your neighbor's got one. Buy something that you can afford that's with a price range that you'll be able to manage. Again, linking back to your budget. So what is in your budget? What can you afford? Don't overcommit yourself or use the grocery money to pay part of the installment, because that leads to other problems. That leads to you then having to rely on bad debt like credit cards or retail store cards to get by, to take care of the basics. So try to focus on good debt and good credit and keep it affordable. Other forms of good credit would be a student loan or business loan. That's really an investment in yourself that ultimately should yield results in the form of an increased earning, and that will improve your financial situation. And bad credit, as you'll see on my picture here, a picture of a shark that represents the Mashonisas and the loan sharks. As you know, they borrow out money at high interest rates. So essentially, once you fall into that system, it's very difficult to get out because of the high interest rate charges. Payday loans are another one, personal loans. So what all these bad debt or bad credit sources have in common is that the cost of servicing the debt is really high. I think this is a good time to segment into understanding the cost of credit. So when we talk about the cost of credit, it's really what are you paying to service a debt or credit. And by way of illustration, you'll see this special here. You'll see a laptop going at a certain price, but then underneath it, you see some terms that appears to make it more affordable for consumers. But upon a closer look, if you look at the total cost, so if you multiply that 317 by that amount of time, you would have seen you've paid off about 7,608 Rand. That's 156%. So you've essentially spent a lot of money or a lot more than what the item is worth. And that's what the cost of credit does to something. Yes, I just wanted to talk through an alternative way of thinking about how you can go about purchasing something like this. as instead of using credit or buying it on installment payment plans, you can try maybe saving up that 317 rand. And if you do that, so if you merely just saved up 317 rand, it would take you about 16 months to build up the cash required to buy the item. So if you look at it, instead of paying it over 24 months and paying the interest, it will take you 16 months to save up for it. If you are, say, that's considering you're not putting it in interest earning or bearing account. If you put it in an account at your bank, that's a savings account that earns you some form of interest, then the time period shortens to 14 months or so, depending on the interest rate you'll be earning on the account. But assuming a 4% or so interest rate, it will take you about 14 months to save up to buy this cash. So you would have saved yourself a lot of money by just being patient and thinking through the decision. Also, with the cost of credit, we tend to see that the cheaper the item that you buy on credit, the more expensive the credit actually is. So the more you'll pay on interest. On my previous example, you would have seen this item here is 4799. If you look at an item that's 3799, you'll see that you end up paying 164%. So nearly close to double the price. And the smaller it gets, the more you pay. So really for these small items, try to save up as much as possible to pay for the item with as much cash as possible, and try to avoid debt or paying interest on these items. So how do you work out the true cost of credit? You will take the installment and multiply it by the repayment period. So in this example, it's that 213 Rand multiplied by the 24 months. And then you divide that by the purchase price times 100. I will show you the formula in a second. That's the formula you use to understand the cost of credit, or the cost of what your interest is really costing you. So what I come across in my daily life with clients, clients that are in debt and need to get out of debt, there are a lot of people struggling with it out there. The best way is to look into actually what do you owe whom. So a lot of the time we find ourselves inundated, feeling overwhelmed, because we don't really know. We just know there's all these debit orders going off our accounts, and we really want to look into this because the situation is so overwhelming. So it's good to make sense of your debt, because this will help you understand how expensive your debt is, how long it's going to take you to become debt-free, and the total amount of money you owe financial institutions. It doesn't have to be a complicated thing. You can just use a document or an Excel spreadsheet where you can list all your debts, so the name, so what debt, who do you owe, the amount owing, the interest rate, the monthly repayments on that, and the term remaining. If you're not sure, you don't know or don't have all this information, I'm sure your credit provider will be more than willing or happy to give you the information. So once you've got all of this listed, the next step is then to decide the approach you're going to take to become debt-free. So how are you going to pay off all the debt? There's really two ways to do it. It depends on the method you'll prefer. Some people prefer to start by paying the high interest rate debt first, which is good because you are paying off the most interest first. Sometimes it's not necessarily the smallest debt that you have, but it's the highest interest rate first, to save on the cost of interest and ultimately the amount you're paying. So where you are in a situation where you can afford to pay that 100 Rand, 200 Rand, 500 Rand extra, it's good to allocate additional payments to your credit so that you pay it off faster. Other people feel more comfortable to start with the smallest balance first. So they'll pay off the smallest balance first and then use whatever they were paying towards that specific account to allocate to the next account and then the next one. So that way you're building momentum and you also stay motivated to keep going and to keep paying off your credit. The main thing and the key thing to remember is that, remember, if you don't address the situation, it's not going to change. So it doesn't help to avoid it, doesn't help you not knowing who you owe and what you're paying. It is very helpful to make sense of your debt and decide on a strategy that you're going to use to pay off the debt so that ultimately you become debt-free, or you mainly left with good credit on things like your house and your affordable vehicle and things like that. Rihanna, at this point, I just want to check, is there any questions regarding debt and credit?
Katlego, I don't see any questions. If there's anybody that's got a question, you're welcome to unmute and ask your question.
A kind of question between debts and credit. So how to differentiate between it?
Sorry, sir, that line is very bad. I don't know if you caught the question there, Rihanna.
I'm going to try. Was the question, how do you differentiate between good debt and bad debt? Is that the question? Could you just indicate with a thumbs up?
Not really, Rihanna. Not really.
Okay.
Not really.
Okay,
I was
you're
saying
good now.
I was saying the difference between the debts and the credit. What is the difference? Because most of the questions that some of us are unable to answer. What is the difference between the debts and the credit?
What is the difference between debt and credit?
And credit. Okay, got it. So it actually means the same thing. Debt is credit. It means borrowing money essentially to buy something. The main difference, or the main thing that we should distinguish, is what is good debt or good credit, and what is bad debt or bad credit. So debt and credit we can use interchangeably, but it ultimately means the same thing. It means borrowing money to acquire something.
Katlego, can I add something to that? I think it is important that when we are thinking of buying something on credit, we need to firstly make sure that we can actually afford to pay it back. That will just help us to not get into trouble. So, do I need that item? Or is it something that I want? And can I actually afford that monthly payment without getting into trouble?
100%. I agree with that 100%, Rihanna.
I've got a question here, Katlego. If one is struggling with debt, is taking up debt review advisable? What are the advantages and disadvantages?
Okay. So debt review is essentially a process where you undergo, well, first of all, I just want to say we should be very careful with the debt review process. I think go with a provider that's reputable and that is trustworthy. That's number one. Number two, so it's a process that you go through and get an institution to look at your debt and take you, so they'll negotiate better or lower installments or payments on your behalf, and then make that arrangement for you with your creditors. What are the advantages? So the advantages is it does give you more control over your finances. So you all of a sudden now you're paying less. If you were over indebted and your income wasn't covering all your debt or your expenses, all of a sudden now you are paying less on your debt, which means you have more money available to cover other household expenses or whatever the case may be that you need the money for. So that's the advantage of going through debt review, and it's really for someone who's over indebted, who's not able to cover all their monthly needs on their salary because too much of it is spent on debt. Disadvantages is it does indicate to creditors that you are unable to manage your debt. So for a period of time, you may find that you are unable to further borrow money until you are through the debt review process. But once you are through it, I think you should be fine.
Does that answer your question, the person that asked it? Okay. I've got another question here. What are the dangers of high interest debt and how can you avoid it?
It's a good question. The dangers of high interest debt is that it eats into, remember, so our starting point was looking at our budget and looking at how much we're getting. So what's the income we're making and what are we spending it on? So when you have a lot of these high interest debt or credit items in your budget that you are servicing, all of a sudden you start realizing that, shoot, due to all these what seemed to be small amounts in the beginning have now added up and they're eating up more and more into your income. So that now you all of a sudden are under pressure in that you can't meet your all your monthly expenses. The other danger is that when you are spending too much on debt and credit, it makes it very difficult to have savings and investments, which we'll go into later. So that's another danger there. And also, it makes it difficult for you to set goals and plan going forward. So if one of your goals or desires is to travel and experience different things and see the world, you won't have money to do things like that because now all your money is spent on high debts, high cost debts, and the like. So it's very important to try and limit the amount you spend on debt so that you have more income available for yourself and your family and for the goals you set for yourself. I hope that answers that question.
Thank you, Katlego. I've got a question for you.
Yes.
Going back to the credit score, how can I improve my credit score? You said we shouldn't use credit or we should use it very carefully, but say I don't have any accounts and I want to purchase a property. Basically now I've got a low credit score. So how can I make sure that I've got a good credit score?
Okay. A great question, Rihanna. I get that one often from my clients as well. So I think let me start off by saying, it's not practical these days to be completely debt-free unless you from a privileged position whereby you have someone who bought you a house, or you've inherited something, or but the normal average person like you and I will at some point make use of debt. So the credit score does now become important. Be careful, because the institutions know this, and they will encourage you and say, well, take out a credit card, and then you can build your credit score. That's correct, because you will be showing that you are able to pay off debt if you are servicing your debt on time. But be careful not to take up a credit that is, for example, a ridiculous limit on a credit card. So all of a sudden they say, well, you qualify for 100,000. You don't need 100,000 to build your credit score. You need a small balance, whether it's 1,000 or 5,000 Rand. Very important, pay that bill on time when it's due, and pay as far as possible, pay it in full every month. So if you have that credit card and you're using 1,000 Rand on it every month, pay back the full 1,000 at the end of the month, and then repeat the process. So now all of a sudden, the institution can see you are borrowing money and you are paying it back. You are paying it back on time. And then that starts to build your credit record, because they can now see your behavior with credit.
Okay, Katlego, so what you're saying is a credit card is a good way to build your credit record, but I need to make sure that I can actually afford that monthly repayment. So whatever I spend on the card, I need to make sure that I can pay it back at the end of the month.
That's
and
correct.
that will build my credit record as long as I keep up my regular payments on my credit card.
That's correct. And go into it knowingly and have a plan up front, because the reality is the interest rate on a credit card is very high. So that's why I caution against what will feel like easy money, because the bank will try to give you as much credit as possible. And then if you are not disciplined, you end up spending all that money, and all of a sudden you end up with a bill that you can't pay, and then you default or skip a few payments or underpay in a few months, and that then leads to the bad credit record.
Good, thank you. Katlego, I've got another question here. Is there still debt amnesty?
Debt amnesty. That one I'm not sure on, Rihanna. I don't know if you can help me with an answer there, but I'm not sure about that one.
No, I'm not sure either. Let's park that one. If Jackie, you can let me know what's your email address, we can definitely get back to you. And all of a sudden, I've got another one. Is it advisable to take a loan top up on an existing loan with a bank? Is a cheaper interest rate applicable, or is it better to get a credit card?
That's a tricky one. So remember, a loan top up, that will depend on your situation. So if you are taking a top up loan or a further loan on a bond, as an example, or a mortgage loan, so those are generally, there is a lower interest rate on those. And the bank will allow you to borrow further, because they know that you have the asset that they can then sell. So it's a win-win. You getting a lower interest rate. The bank knows the money is secure. But be careful to take further loans on a revolving loan, because that is just a recipe for disaster. Because what tends to happen on those things is you will be borrowing and borrowing and borrowing, and you'll never get out of that system. And the interest rate on those are high. So I would avoid that situation. But ultimately, it comes back to your comment earlier, Rihanna, as well, about needs and wants. So we also need to be careful on what we're spending or what we're borrowing the money to buy. So try to distinguish between something you absolutely need and can't live without, and things that actually it's not the end of the world if you don't have it. And try not to borrow to purchase things like that, especially if you're taking further loans and the like.
Thank you, Katlego. Let's see. Can you explain to us what is a prescribed debt?
Prescribed debt.
Yes.
Okay, that's another one we're going to need to park for now, Ariana,
Okay.
so that we can get the proper answer and send that through.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. Thank you, Katlego. I think, guys, let's continue. I see there is more questions, but let's continue with the presentation and we'll get back to some of your questions a bit later. So, Katlego, you can continue.
Okay. Yes, I agree. Let's get to the exciting stuff now. So ultimately, we all, I think, strive to find ourselves in a position or in a place where we are building and creating wealth for ourselves, our families, and the future generation. So once we've addressed our budgets and have our debt under control, so we are not over indebted, we only have good debt, paying off our houses and our cars that we can afford, and we're in a place where we have disposable income, then the journey of wealth creation begins, because now all of a sudden you can save and invest for the future. A good place to start is to build up or build yourself an emergency fund. So that is a cash or savings that you will have that will cover you in times of a financial emergency. I normally encourage people to build between 3 to 6 months of their living expenses, so that if at any time something happens, they have cash or money available to cover that emergency. That also prevents you from going into debt or needing a credit card or a loan to cover that emergency. So build up that savings and have that emergency fund in place. Once that is in place, you can look at further savings for certain goals. We spoke earlier about setting yourself goals. So for things like paying your children's education, going on holiday, whatever your needs or your desires are, you can now save and put money away for those. And then investing is more the long term for things that are 5 years or more. That is for things such as retirement and the like. So there are different instruments that one can use to save and invest. How you decide really is based on the time you are going to have it invested for. So that also determines the return you get on the investment, and also what the risk of the investment or the risk that's associated with that investment is. As an example, I spoke about an emergency fund. That is really money you put in a savings account. It can be at your bank as well, as long as you're earning an interest rate on there. That is seen as cash savings, and that's mainly considered to be safe because you'll never get less than the value you put in, and you're earning some form of interest rate. As you go up the spectrum, you start introducing other elements such as shares into the mix. So to contrast the safe cash investment, which works for things like an emergency fund, the shares are more geared for your long-term investments, things like your retirement. They do have what people may perceive as risk, but I just want to clarify what the risk is. So the risk is of an investment is when that investment underperforms. And this is usually due to something like the share price or market conditions. So if we take a share as an example, the price varies and moves up and down all the time. And that is mainly driven by investor sentiment and the market. So remember that the only time you realize the actual loss is when you decide, okay, I've bought this share at 100 Rand. I see now that it's worth 80 Rand. I'm actually going to sell this investment and take my 80 Rand. So now you've materialized and you've realized that loss by taking that action. The right thing to do is hold on to the investment so that it recovers, because it does recover over time and the share price does actually appreciate over time. So all of a sudden, a share that you bought 5 years ago, 7 years ago for 100 Rand is now worth 180 Rand. So that's how you make money from something like shares. It's not a short-term game, it's long-term. You need to be patient. You need to understand it so that you know you need to wait out the period so that you make the return that you aim for. And like I said, so the majority of the time, unless the company is liquidated, your share will not lose the money. The share price should recover, and you should make money over time. Ideally, in a portfolio, you want to have a mixture of all these assets or asset classes. So there is a place for cash investments in your portfolio, and having a good mixture of these means you are well diversified across these different asset classes, depending on the need for that investment. And that means that when you have the diversification, all of a sudden the up and down movement of the total portfolio or the risk in the portfolio is not as much as when you own shares only, because you have a mixture of everything, and each component is playing its role for the intended goal. Just to again reiterate that the longer the time you have, the more risk you want to take. So it's the more you're going to want exposure to growth assets such as your property and shares. If it's a short time period, you can't really afford to any losses, and it's for something like your emergency fund, or you need to pay off school fees in the next year and not necessarily university fees in 10 years, rather invest it in cash or school fees for the next year. But if it's university fees in 10 years, you definitely want exposure to something like shares to grow over time. Also remember that the biggest risk, and it's something we'll get to later, is that when you have all your investments in cash over time, you will not be able to beat inflation by holding cash only. But that's an element we'll get to just now. Just to reiterate the benefit of compounding. So how does compounding work? In this example, you'll see, so investor one starts to save 1,000 Rand per month for 10 years. Then he stops at year 10 and he has around 204,000. So, and then what happens all of a sudden? So he stopped at 10 years. He stopped adding the 1,000 Rand per month. But he keeps the money invested. You'll see that after 15 years, it grows. After 20 years, that's the balance. And then after 30 years, he's got about 1.5 million. Investor 2 starts to save 1,500 after 10 years. So he didn't start when investor 1 started. He's starting when investor 1 stops. So he's starting to save more, but it's 10 years later. So he's getting less time in the market than investor one. So what you'll see is that all of a sudden, if you compare investor one's balance after 30 years opposed to investor two's balance, investor two does end up having a lower amount, and that's simply a function of time. So the longer you are invested, the longer you have your money invested, the more you will get at the end of the day because of the effect of compounding. If you start late, you can try and keep up, but you will have less than a person who started a long time ago. And remember that you can always contact a financial planner or a CFP professional to help you understand setting goals and what the suitable investment for that specific goal will be. They will also help you work out the correct diversification, the correct mixture of assets that you need to invest in for your particular goal. Because as I alluded to earlier, the thing that makes me worry the most is inflation. So what is this inflation? So inflation, we've actually seen it in action in the last, it's always been there, but in the last 2 years, we've seen the real effects of inflation, which is why the interest rates went up, because the Reserve Bank is trying to keep inflation under control. So what you'll see on this example is that in 2022, if we were going with this example of baked beans, you could afford 6 cans. And all of a sudden, in 2024, because of the effects of inflation, you can only afford to buy 3. That's what the inflation does to your money. It reduces the purchasing power over time. Which is why it's important to invest appropriately so that you outperform inflation, so that you are not stuck in investments that's only based in cash that will struggle to keep up with inflation in the long run. Because ideally what you want is your money to keep up its value and its purchasing power, which means you need to invest it appropriately so that you can always afford to buy 6 cans of baked beans instead of it losing its purchasing power. Yeah, this is another example just to show us that the basket of goods you could afford in 2018 has drastically decreased for the same value or the same amount of money in 2024. So just to reiterate again, it's important to understand your savings and investments. So set goals for your short term, medium term, and long term. Short term, things like your emergency fund needs to be in place for the reasons I discussed earlier. And then your longer term investments, you really need to make sure that you are invested appropriately, and a professional financial planner will be able to help you with the appropriate investments. And also a big thing that we sometimes take for granted is this concept of retirement. We tend to think of it, it's difficult for us to picture ourselves old and needing money, but the reality is we do get old. And as you've seen, inflation over time means you need to protect the purchasing power of your money, meaning you do need to put in place a plan for building capital so that you can use it to fund your retirement in the long run. What's important is when it comes to thinking about your retirement, it's also good to think about what sort of lifestyle you want. Remember, set smart goals. So part of that should be realistic. So it's not going to help you to set unrealistic goals. So be realistic about your goals and think about what you want and plan towards that. What commonly comes up is people want to know, so how much should I be saving for a retirement? So as a guideline, I share some of these. So you'll see for someone that's at age 25 and would like to replace 75% of their current income, they need to be saving something like 17% of their current income. So if you're earning 10,000 Rand, you need to be saving 1,700 Rand if you are 25. You'll see as the age goes up and you only start saving at a later stage, numbers go up. So if you're starting to save at 45, you need to save at least 59% of your income to replace 75% of your current earnings. The message here is clear. I think the earlier you start, the better off you will be, because you'll benefit from the benefit of compounding as illustrated in our earlier example. And as you'll see, if you start earlier, the need to increase your investments over time is smaller, as opposed to when you start late. If we go to age 45, you'll need to save 59% of your income, and you'll need to increase that by a rate of 22% every year, which is quite a big ask. So I would advise everyone to start as early as you can. It's never too late. The most important thing is you get started and you be realistic with yourself and you save as much as possible for your long-term goals. So in summary, going forward, just to cover the basics we've covered today, what should you do going forward? Get your monthly budget in order. So know what you're spending your money on. I was happy to see that many of you are already budgeting, so that's good. For those who are in debt and struggling with debt, the next step would be to reduce and manage your debt to a level that's manageable and that you can afford. And then once your debt is under control, you improve your savings rate. You add and you save as much towards your goals as possible so that you can do the things you want to do. And remember, with investments and savings, the most important thing is to differentiate between what's short-term, medium-term, and long-term, and invest accordingly for each category of goals. Also important to consider is your estate planning. So do you have a valid will in place? A very important document that you'll need and your family will actually need when you're no longer here. But for those with children, very important, and spouses, very important to have that in place to make sure that they are taken care of. Make sure that your spouse has sufficient knowledge about finances as well, and what happens if you pass away. Will they continue to be able to manage and run the household? That comes to the question of having adequate insurance in place to make sure your family is sufficiently provided for, or in terms of a disability or an illness, that you are able to fund yourself and your family to make sure that there's no financial stress on the family if you pass away or are disabled. And also, I think something that's very close to me is education and educating the future generation about money. So the basics that we've covered today, if everybody on the call who has children can speak to their children about this and get them ready so that by the time they are adults, they have the added advantage. They've gotten a head start from you as parents. They make better financial decisions and ultimately are financially much better off than us. I think that's part of giving a legacy to your children is also educating them so that they are smarter and wiser and are in a better place. So very important to chat to your kids about money. If you're looking for a financial planner or someone to help you through your finances, please reach out. You can go to the website fpimymoney123.co.za, find a planner. There is a link there for you to speak to a professional that's close to you in your area that will be able to assist. If you'd also like to receive our newsletter with articles and more information to educate and empower yourselves, you can send an email to mymoney123@fpi.co.za.
Thank you, Katlego. This was so informative. I really enjoyed it. I hope everybody else on the call enjoyed it. I did see some good comments. Everybody on the call, if you are interested to hear more about retirement and the new two-pot system, join us for our webinar on Thursday. Have a look on social media. You will see the links there. If there's questions that we haven't answered, please add your email address and we will get back to you with some of the answers. Thank you, Katlego. Thanks, guys. Thank you for joining us. And we look forward to hosting you at a different event. Take care. Goodbye.